Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders for KW Bonsai. Today we're looking at my Austrian Pine. It's early May. The candles have elongated right to the point where they won't elongate anymore. The next step for the candles is for the needles to actually start coming out. So we're right at the point where the candles have elongated and the needles are about to come out. So this is the ideal time to start pinching the candles, which is a term for pinching back the new growth. So here's a close-up of the new growth. You can see in a pine tree, the new growth starts off as what we call a candle. It's a tight cluster of needles that are folded up into a cylinder. And they slowly elongate from spring till about now. This is about as long as they'll ever get. And the next stage of them is the needles actually start to unfold from this cylindrical form. So looking at the tree, we've got some candles that are just really tiny. They're like a little tuft of folded up needles. Others are quite long and cylindrical. And then there's some medium-sized ones also. One here, one here. So you can tell the strength of the cluster of needles by the length of the candle. So the longest candles are the really vigorous ones, and the small ones are the weaker ones. So the aim of candle pinching is to equalize the balance of vigor in the tree. So generally what we do is we prune back these longer ones more, the medium ones less, and the small ones we don't touch at all. We just leave them alone. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is equalizing the balance of vigor in the tree before the needles come out. So here's a shot of the lowest branch. And you can see there's not a lot of really vigorous candles on it. There's some down here. Let me just focus it. Yeah. There's some right here and here. And there's also some towards the back. Right back here. That are quite vigorous. But generally the lower branches, you'll get smaller candles on them. They're generally a little weaker than the ones up top. Here's a view of the apex. And you can see it's most of the candles are at least medium size. Some are quite tall. So generally pines are apex dominant, so you get more strength up top in the tree and less down lower. You can see on this branch there's a lot of really tiny buds developing on some of the older wood, which is nice. It gives you a lot of choices when it comes to styling the branch. So those kind of buds we'll leave alone. So when it comes to candle pinching, there's a few different techniques, and I'll try and go over some of them. So one technique for pruning candles is to prune your weakest buds first. A few days later, prune your medium buds, and a few days later, prune your strongest buds. And the theory behind this is you prune your weakest buds first, and there's still good sap flow going to the branches. So it encourages a lot of sap flow, and your smallest buds will get that nice sap flow going past them on the branch. Then as you prune, your medium ones next, you've still got your strongest candles providing sap flow in the branch, and then finally you prune off your longest ones. So that's one technique. A second technique you can use is to have a sacrifice branch growing on each of the branch tips. So it provides a lot of strength. A lot of energy goes into growing the sacrifice branch, and less into your weaker buds, which keeps your needles on those weaker buds small. The energy is going into the to sacrifice branches, and then they get pruned off totally later on, and you're left with your small needles on the actual branches you want to keep. So that's the second technique. The third technique is probably the most easy one, and it's the one I usually do, and that's just to pinch the candles to an equal vigor. So as I said before, our largest candles you pinch back the most, our medium-sized candles you pinch back less, and the smallest candles you don't touch them at all. And this sort of instantly balances the vigor of the tree. Yeah, so I think that's the three basic techniques that I can think of right now anyway for pruning, for candle pinching on pines. If you don't pinch them at all, you'll get your strongest candles will grow with a lot of vigor, and some of the finer buds back there may not develop into needles. They may just dry up and fall off. The branch will decide, well, I got lots of energy and needles going out to the tips, to the strong growth. I don't need these inner buds, so they just become redundant and they never develop into needles. So it's kind of important to pinch your candles in spring. It also keeps your branches compact. If you let them grow long in spring, you'll get large internodes between the needles on your branches, vigorous growth. Your branches will thicken up quickly. They'll shade out a lot of other areas of the tree. So it's just bad to let the tree grow when it's in the refinement stage. If it's a brand new pine that you've just starting and it doesn't have a lot of vigor, you will want to let the branches grow unrestricted for maybe a year or two to get lots of vigor in the tree. Without a lot of vigor in a bonsai tree, you can't really do much work to it. That's why we try and do everything in bonsai to encourage growth and strong growth in the tree. It's kind of a misconception that growing bonsai, you're trying to keep the tree as weak as possible so the needles are small, restrict your watering and your fertilizing. That generally leads to a very weak tree, and it may look really good for a while, but it also may die. So it's better to have, a strong, vigorous tree and manage the growth with pruning and that than to manage it by restricting water and fertilizer and having a very weak tree. Because it's, as I said, the trees can die very quickly if they're on that borderline edge of living and dying. There's another general rule in bonsai that you shouldn't repot the tree the same year as you wired the tree. And because I wired this tree this winter, I'm not going to repot it this year. And I'm not going to repot it because this soil is draining really well. There's no problems with drainage. The tree's growing really well. It's not weak. And so there's no need to repot it this year, especially when we've wired it. If you wire and repot the tree in the same year, you're asking for trouble. You're stressing the tree with the wire, stressing the tree with repotting, and it could lead to disaster. So you should alternate, your wiring and your repotting. So I'm actually going to start pinching candles now. So we're going to use that technique where we're just going to equalize the candles to approximately all the same length. So our tallest ones we want to prune back quite hard, so I'm going to start with this one. And you don't want to take it too far back. You want to keep some of the new needles. So we're going to take about 2/3 of it off. So we're just going to grab it at the base with your fingers here. And then we grab the top at the point we want to pinch it off at, which is right about here. And we just grab it firmly and give it a little pull. There we go. So there's the part we pruned off. You can see inside there's the green needles that are about to come out. So here's our second needle now. Again, we're going to grab it at the base. And some people give it a little twist as they're pulling the top off. The important thing is to grab it at the base so you don't break the entire new growth off. That's a bad thing to do. So here we go for that one. That's off. And there's some medium-sized ones at the back here, so we're going to do that, and we're only going to pinch about half of it off. There we go. There we go. Actually, I'm going to take a little more off this one. There. Now there's some strong ones at the front here. We're going to take just over half of it off. There. And here. And the rest of the buds on this branch they're very small. So right now the branch, all the buds are balanced now. They're all very tiny, and it should equalize the vigor in this branch. So we'll go on to the rest of the tree. We'll be candle pinching and equalizing them all so all the buds are a similar size. The old needles, we want to leave them on the tree as long as possible. They're providing energy to the tree. They usually fall off and fall anyway. So unless you're preparing the tree for a show or something where you want to remove all these long old needles, you should leave them on. The needles on an Austrian pine, they slowly get larger and larger as the year goes on. So when the candles first burst open with their needles, you get very short needles. The tree looks really awesome. It's got all these short little needles over it. Looks very miniature and scale-like. Slowly as the summer goes on, the needles elongate. And every year as you develop the tree, you get more buds, more foliage, and the candles are less, they don't grow as long. So slowly over the years you get more compact needles. Now an Austrian pine, it's naturally a very large needled tree, so you can't expect miracles with it. There is a certain size you can reduce the needles to reasonably without hurting the health of the tree. So don't expect in like 20 more years or something that you would end up with little short needles like you might on a Japanese white pine. It's always going to be a large needled tree. But we do our best to get them as short as possible by having lots of buds, lots of foliage, and that reduces our needle size to a degree. So yeah, so throughout the summer, the needles start getting longer and longer. So kind of the best time to show the tree is sort of midsummer. The needles have all come out fully, they're fully developed. These buds, they start off growing, as you can see, they're all vertical. As the needles come out, they start to bend back down to a better flow with the branch structure. They don't stay vertical like this, so don't be in too much of a hurry to wire all these vertical candles horizontal, because they do go more horizontal as the needles mature and they look less unnatural. They flow in with the branches better. I haven't fertilized this tree very much this year, and generally most people don't begin fertilizing till after the needles have come out and started to harden off. So if you give the tree a lot of fertilizer in spring, you're going to get very long, lush growth. It's better to hold off on your fertilizer till the needles have come out and they're starting to harden off, and then you start slowly increasing the fertilizer in your tree. So the idea is to have the tree weaker in spring by not fertilizing. As the summer progresses, you're going to add more and more fertilizer to it to build up the energy for the winter, to grow more buds for the next year. If you don't fertilize much at all, the tree can get quite weak and you can kill the tree. So it's like, you know, reducing your watering to the point where your needles are starting to get shorter. Reduce your fertilizer, you're going to get, the tree is going to look really good. It's going to have very short needles, but then eventually the health of the tree is going to suffer and it might die on you. So it's better to hold off on the fertilizer till the needles harden off, then slowly start applying more and more fertilizer as it gets towards fall, and then again in spring hold off the fertilizer till the new buds come out, and that type of a cycle. So the fertilization happens later in the year to build energy to get the tree through winter and develop all your new buds. So I'm just pinching candles. You'll find on pines, as your tree gets closer and closer to the refinement stage, you'll find that the needles will get more balanced every year. You'll get less of a difference between your strong growth and your weak growth. So even though you have more candles to pinch, the difference in your long vigorous candles and your small ones that we don't touch gets less dramatic. You know, when a tree's young, you'll get sections of the tree that have really long candles and really vigorous growth. But in this tree, as it gets older, we get less of a difference. The candles come out more of an equal size. You know, there's no giant 3-inch long candles. So you're always working towards balancing the vigor in the tree, getting, you know, every branch as equal as the next one. And as you refine your tree, you get that. You get a good balance and it doesn't get wildly different. So we're almost done our candle pinching. Hasn't taken too long. There's a lot of fine buds that we didn't need to touch. There weren't a whole lot of really super vigorous ones that we had to pinch back too much. And these candles will probably start getting the needles out in the next few days. There was one candle on here that I could actually start to see a little bit of green on it, where the needles were actually starting to come out. So it's the right time of year to do it, when you just see the needles, the candles about to open up with their needles. And I think we're done. Yes, we are. So we're just going to show you the results. I'm starting at the apex here. And some of the branches. So you can see we've got all the candles pruned to approximately the same size. So it's ready to start growing. So that's our work for today on the Austrian pine. The time frame you have when the candles are fully elongated but the needles haven't come out to the time where the needles actually start coming out is usually a matter of days. So you should check your tree daily this time of year to check when you should pinch the candles. So as I said, the ideal time is when the candles are in that transformation stage from a pure cylinder, when the needles just start to come out a bit. And that's the time to pinch your candles off. So that's it for today. Nigel Saunders for KW Bonsai. We'll see you next time.